Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Cozy Mystery Mingle. So excited because today we have Helena Dixon with us.
Hi. Nice
Hi.
to see you. Well, here, I should say. Can't see you, but I'm here.
Yeah, sometimes I have it set up so I have one of those teleprompters, so it's a mirror. Yeah. So I can see the mirror, but otherwise, it's hard. So fun fact, this is our first historical mystery on the podcast.
Ooh.
Yeah, there just haven't been, I would definitely have more. There haven't been any historical new releases that I've seen pop up recently. So this is our first.
Oh, that's exciting then.
Yeah. So I'll just stop talking. Do you want to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you?
I'm Helena Dixon. I write cozy historical mysteries set in the 1930s. And next year, there will also be a new series set during World War II, which will be cozy historical as well. So there's quite a bit going on at the minute. So
nice. And we're here today to talk about your new release, Murder at the Island Hotel. And this is book 15 in the Miss Underhay mysteries. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that book and what's in it?
Yeah, Murder at the Island Hotel. All of my books are set, as I say, in the 1930s. The series starts in 1933 and progresses. So Murder at the Island Hotel we're up to 1936. So it's early spring, 1936. It's a remote little island just off the coast of Devon. We've got several of those. It's a brand new hotel built in the Art Deco style. Kitty, my heroine, and her friend Alice, who was a maid, are going over to the island to inspect the hotel on behalf of the Hoteliers Association. They're sharing their boat trip with a group of actors who are doing, they're friends of the owners, and they're doing sort of a test run of the hotel before the official opening. And when they get there, unfortunately, Sir Norman Villiers, the owner of the hotel, dies. So it starts from there, really. And the question first is, it looks like it's a suicide, but it quickly becomes apparent to Kitty that it's not a suicide. And then a big storm hits and they're all trapped on the island, along with the person whoever killed Sir Norman.
And this is definitely a deviation from the normal. So this is book 15. How is this? Can readers pick this up without reading books 1 through 14?
Oh, absolutely. All of the books are written as standalone, so you can jump in at any point. If you did start at the beginning with Murder at the Dolphin Hotel, you can see the progression of Kitty's relationship with her now husband, Matt. And there is a bit of a mystery that goes on throughout the first 10 books in the background, which is about what happened to Kitty's mother, who disappeared when she was a young girl. But you can just read any of them at any point, and you quickly grasp where you were and who was who. Readers always say in the reviews they can just jump straight in and find that they're okay with that. So
perfect. Yeah. Anything that you think they should know, though, before going into book 15 that would be key or helpful to give them more context for this particular story?
I think if you're an Agatha Christie fan and you've read or seen things like the film And Then There Were None, it's got that sort of feel to it. It's the same sort of time period in a very similar setting. Agatha Christie set her book based around a place called Burr Island, which is actually not far from my house. I live in Devon. I live 2 miles from Agatha Christie's former home at Greenway. But mine is based on a mix of Burr Island and another sort of outcrop of rock, which is just off Torquay, called Thatcher's Rock. So it's an amalgam of the two things. So if you like that kind of feel to a story, you probably enjoy it.
That's very cool. I didn't realize you live so close. Can people tour the Agatha Christie home, or is it just like a regular house now?
Oh, no, you can go. It belongs to the National Trust, so you can go. You can even stay in some of the cottages, which are in the grounds there. There's a load of Agatha Christie stuff you can do here. There's a trail. You can also go to a place called Tor Abbey, where they've got what they call the poison garden, where they grow all the plants that she based her poisons on in her books. And every year in September, we have a big Agatha Christie festival. There are various plays, and they do tours and talks and all kinds of things. It's great fun.
I didn't realize she grew her. That's like really getting into research, right? To grow your own poisons.
That's quite interesting when you go around, to see all the different ones. But she was very knowledgeable because obviously she trained as a pharmacist, so she had a big knowledge of medicines and poisons, which I always enjoy because in my previous life I'm a registered nurse and midwife and health visitor, so I use my medical knowledge in probably a similar way to the way she did, so I can appreciate how she did that. So yeah.
Wow. And you do gardening too, which I'm
yes.
poison plants, right?
No, there's no poisons. Well, there are a few that would be toxic in my garden, but they're not deliberately there as poison. I always find it so fascinating, though, that you can take a perfectly innocent plant, such as rhubarb, where you can eat the stalks in rhubarb crumble and all kinds of nice things, but the leaves are poisonous if you were to eat the leaves. So,
I didn't know that.
Huh. Yeah, it's quite interesting.
Yeah, what's growing in your garden right now?
Right now, my daffodils are open. I've got some little grape muscari which are open. I've just been planting up today. My neighbour has very kindly given me some rhododendrons, so I've been planting those in a big pot. I've got some Bellis daisies that are open and some primroses, and my camellia's about to flower. So I've got a fair bit going on at the minute out there. So I've been pulling weeds and potting up things at the minute.
Nice. And this is just for your own enjoyment? You don't send them or sell them or?
No. This is just something me and my neighbours, we often do plant swaps. My neighbour Karen, she's a very keen gardener as well. And we've just been planning what we're growing in our vegetable troughs for later this year. She grows hers. She's got, this is going to sound a bit weird, because we're close to the sea, she grows hers in an old boat. Which is out on the front verge in front of the house. It's all planted up with flowers, and she grows like vegetables and salads in between the flowers. And I've got a big vegetable trough on legs, and I grow salads and tomatoes and spring onions and things in there.
Oh, nice. I didn't even know that was possible. That sounds very cool. It's a good use of the boat.
Yeah, it's very pretty. It's really nice.
Yeah. Sure. All right. So this book is set in the 1930s. So tell us what you love, because you could have picked any point in time in history. What do you love about this period versus any other period?
I think this period fascinates me because it's a time of huge social change. You've got the aftermath of the First World War, the Great War, where women's roles really started to change. And it was sort of a worldwide change almost as well. You've got the end of Prohibition in America. You've got huge shifts going on politically in Germany and Italy and Spain and all of those things. In England, you've got the start of the black shirt movement and different things going on there as well. But for women, they were becoming more empowered. There was more shifting between the social classes, so there was more mobility. It was the last hurrah of the great country house. So you've still got the very wealthy with their butlers and maids and all the rest of it. But it was less fixed now. You've got a lot of those big houses that had got tremendous debts because they'd had to pay taxes to the government when the sons who were due to inherit those estates had died in the First World War. And a lot of them were marrying rich American heiresses who'd come over who wanted the title and the estate and to be lady of the manor. And in return, they provided those estates with money. So you've got all of this going on. And for me, that's absolutely fascinating. It's a great sort of time to write about. And you've got the advent of the electric light, telephones, motor cars. All of that was all new and exciting and happening and fresh, where it hadn't been before. Only like 20 years before, women had still been in crinolines and bustles, and now, shock horror, some of them were wearing trousers. It was like, oh, the amount of social change in that period is huge.
Yeah, it's interesting because you're writing from the perspective of the British versus like every time I think of the 1930s, because here it was the Great Depression, which didn't translate at all over to Britain, right?
You've got real contrast. You've got huge wealth in the big houses and the upper social class, and huge poverty in places like Jarrow and Wales, where they actually did a march from Jarrow in the northeast of England down to Downing Street to protest at how poor they were and all the deprivation. So you've got and people turned up in their Rolls Royces to watch the marchers who couldn't even keep their boots on. They were so poor. So you've got all of this going on, and it's just fascinating to write about it. It gives you so much material, really.
Mm-hmm. Wow. And so is there anything about that period that you didn't like, or things that you felt were an injustice during, other than the rich poor divide?
I think that the social inequality is a big thing. And my heroine does get a bit frustrated because she sees herself as a very modern, independent woman, and she still finds it very difficult when she rubs up against a society that, doesn't believe that, doesn't encourage women to have their own bank accounts, and that young women should have their wage paid to their father rather than to them, and then they're given pocket money, instead of the money that they've gone out and earned, things like that. So that's quite interesting, and it sort of covers. I tried to touch on some of the parts of the women's suffrage movement and what happened, with women getting the vote and things like that. So there are little bits of that all built into the stories as well. So you get a real feel for the time, the time period they were in.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't. I mean, if you weren't born back then, you just don't realize, like, it was until the 1970s, I think, that in the US, women could have their own bank account.
Yeah, that's right.
To me, right? And was it the same in the UK? Was it the 70s?
Yeah, I think it was really. You don't sort of realise just how much things have changed. The expectations on women that they shouldn't work after they were married. That they would have, be expected to give up their job, or they should have a lesser wage because they were only working for pin money, not to support a family, not like a man. So, you've got all of those little things, and that again makes it interesting.
Yes. And I think too, it was funny that what's that British, Bridgerton, someone was like, oh, why can't she own the house? And I was like, women couldn't own property back then. And I think people just don't realize.
Tricky. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and in amongst that, you have got some real pioneers of women that owned and ran their own breweries, for instance, or women that did own some businesses, but they were less common, fewer and far between, and that's where Kitty stands out a little bit in her time period. So
yeah, Kitty seems very independent, free-spirited, just kind of doing what she wants. So let's just start with her name. Is Kitty short for something?
No, she is just Kitty. She was just christened as Kitty. So it can be short for Catherine, but in her case it's not.
It's not. Okay. And how does she have all this money? Is she just super wealthy, a trust fund?
She actually isn't that wealthy. She's relatively well off because her grandmother and her own a hotel. So she's a businesswoman. She owns her own hotel, which is the Dolphin, based in Dartmouth, which is quite a prestigious little coastal town just down the road from me. So in her society, she's fairly well-to-do, but she's not in the highest echelons of society. And she's a working woman. But her mother went missing when she was young, and her father, literally, to avoid serving in the First World War, went to America and stayed there. So he didn't have. He's quite a ne'er-do-well, Kitty's father, and he pops up from time to time, usually to cause havoc in her life, but he pops up. But his sister is actually a lady. So her cousin, who she comes to get to know that family, they actually have the big house and the title and everything else. So Kitty moves in between the different levels of society. Her best friend is Alice, who's the eldest of 8 children. She's a chambermaid at the hotel. So she's mixing with all of those different people. Matt, who she meets, he's older than her. He's about 11 years older than her. He served in the First World War, and he suffers from post-traumatic stress disorder. He can't stand being in confined spaces, and he has terrible nightmares where he will get up, excuse me, walk around the house and can destroy things in his sleep. So there's quite a bit going on, really.
Okay. And that's interesting too. So Matt is her love interest, right? Throughout all the books.
Yeah.
And there's no real mental health services back then, right? For PTSD.
No.
And so he just deals with it.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. His claustrophobia comes from in the trenches in the First World War. It wasn't uncommon for the trenches were quite deep and they were thick mud. And even with the propping, they would often give way and collapse, and sometimes they would collapse and bury. You can tell how deep they were. They would bury and suffocate a man on horseback in the trench. So you can imagine for Matt, being in an enclosed space is obviously, something he really struggles with. So obviously as a writer, it's my duty to shove him into an enclosed space as often as I can. Poor soul.
Matt, does he make a cameo in this book?
He's in all of the books, but Kitty's really the lead character. But Murder at the Island Hotel, it's really starts off with Kitty and Alice. It's very much driven by them as women. They're very much driving it. Although Matt and the police obviously come over, as soon as the crossing's possible to work on the case.
And so for Kitty, she goes in between the different eras. Does she, because she seems to be going on lots of trips in the books, right? She's going to different places. Is that just something she loves to do, or does she get invited to places, or how does this work out?
Usually they're invitations. So like the second book in the series, Murder at Enderley Hall, that's her aunt and uncle's house. Murder at the Wedding is her cousin Lucy is marrying someone who appears in Murder at Enderley Hall, and that's in Yorkshire. And Matt's originally from Yorkshire, so that's why there's a couple of books set in Yorkshire. And then Murder at the Riviera, which is the book after, which is now on pre-order, which comes after Murder at the Island Hotel. That's set on the French Riviera, and that's as a request from Matt's former employer, who commissions them as private investigators to do a job for the British government. So that accounts for some of their travelling around a little bit.
Okay. And then her home base is always the hotel.
Yes, up until she gets married. She gets married in book 10, and then they move just out of Dartmouth, just up the road near me. It's a little village called Churston. So she's based there then.
Do we see any future little kitties in her future books?
I think that's on the cards for Matt and Kitty. They have quite a debate about it when they've been married for a little while. Nothing's happened, and they sort of, at the moment, Kitty's having a dilemma about, does she want it to happen? Does she not want it to happen? Is she content to just sit and wait and see? And that seems to be her decision really at the minute, and Matt's, that if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. So we'll
have to wait and see.
Yeah.
So
much the same as Kitty.
Yeah. So I saw that this hotel is on Bird Island, which is a real island there, right?
Yeah. And Bird Island's a real island.
Yeah. Are there actually any birds that play a role in this book?
Yeah, there are. All the hotel rooms are named after birds. We have a very rich wildlife around here. There's lots of different birds, as well as we get 4 different kinds of dolphin in the area. There are seals. So anybody visiting Devon would recognise a lot of the birds and the different things. So yeah, it just adds a bit more local colour to it, really.
Got it. It's funny because when you said you were a nurse, for some reason in my mind, because you write historicals, I thought you were a history major.
No, my knowledge of history at school was absolute, because we didn't really do it. We did the dinosaurs and cavemen, Then we did a big bit on Henry VIII, a little bit on the Egyptians, and then something called Tolland Man, which was a mummified man found in a peat bog in Ireland. And that was kind of my history in a nutshell. So everything else I've done since has been things that I've learnt myself and because I'm interested in it. My real passion is old buildings and social history. So I'm not so much interested in the big who was king, who was queen, but more how people at that time lived and what their lives were like, rather than the battle of whatever. That doesn't interest me. I'm much more interested in what did they have inside their house, what did they cook with, how did they marry, where did they live? That to me is much more interesting.
Yeah, and that's usually I don't think there are any royalty mysteries. Like, people are more into like the everyday person and the amateur sleuth.
I think as a reader you want to feel like a connection with the person, don't you? You want to feel like that they'd be the sort of person you go and have coffee with or invite to a dinner party or be friends with, that you feel, that's a connection you want with them. You want to feel like you recognize that person, don't you? That you like them,
Well, speaking of recognizing people, how much is Kitty like you and your personality?
She isn't, not at all. She's not like me physically or in personality, I don't think.
Okay.
My next series, The Secret Detective Agency, which is set in World War II, I think Jane Treen, the heroine in that, is probably more like me than Kitty. Because she's quite, she drinks gallons of coffee, which is something that I do. She smokes like a chimney, but I don't smoke at all, but she does. But she's quite, dives in first and sort of gets on with things. So, yeah.
All right. And well, I forgot to ask, how does Matthew feel about all of Kitty's sleuthing and finding dead bodies?
He was not at all on the same page when the series started. They had quite a few arguments because he's older, he's more traditional. He's very protective of her. He felt very much that it was his role to step in and protect her from things. So they did have quite a few squabbles about that along the way. He's got so much baggage really from his time in the war. He's a widower. He lost his first wife and baby during the war. So he's come into the relationship with a totally different worldview to Kitty. So it took them quite a few books to get on the same sort of page.
Poor man, lost his wife, kid, and he has claustrophobia.
I know, it's dreadful, isn't it? I'm so cruel to him, and he's so lovely, and everybody goes, "Oh, but Matt is so nice."
So tell us about your writing plans for 2024. You have a new book coming out in June?
Yes, that's Murder on the French Riviera. So that's that one. And I've just started the one after that, which is going to be, I think, it's probably going to be called Murder at the Apple Orchard.
Okay.
So I'm just done 8,000 words, I think, on that one. And then I've sent in the outline for the one after that, which will be set in New York, Murder at Central Park. So there are quite a few books. I'm always working on several projects at the same time. So it sounds it's a bit busy. And then, as I say, I'm doing The Secret Detective Agency as well. And I've just finished the first draft of the first book in that. And I'm about to start and do the second book in that one as well. So yeah, I'm quite busy.
Can you give us a little sneak peek in The Secret Detectives? Like, why is it secret? And is it an agency? Is it a lot of group people?
Yeah, well, it starts off in 1941. So we're into the war. There is a lot going on. America hasn't yet joined the war. There's all sorts going on in Britain during that time. Jane, who's the heroine, she works in Whitehall for someone called Brigadier Remington Blythe. People who've read the Matt and Kitty books will recognise Brigadier Remington Blythe because he features in both series. He's the one character that goes across the two series.
Oh, wow.
She manages her own department. She looks after secret agents and different things like that. The hero in that, Arthur, his he's not well enough to fight. He's physically not well enough. He suffers from severe asthma, but he's an academic. So his contribution to the war effort is he cracks codes, solves puzzles and mysteries and problems. And the first book in the series starts where Arthur has just returned back to his house, Half Moon Manor, goes up to his childhood bedroom, looks through his telescope and sees a woman's body floating in the river at the bottom of his garden. And this woman turns out to be connected to Jane's department. And this is where the whole mystery starts. And they have quite a lot of puzzles to solve in that one. So I like doing locked room puzzles and what they're calling impossible mysteries. So I like working in a sort of a closed environment, if you like, where you've got a smallish group of suspects and it can't be any of them, but yet it must be one of them. And I like that to work with. It's more fun.
Yeah, if you like the game Clue, then it sounds like your books are perfect.
Yeah.
Great. And then, so where can readers find you if they wanted to connect with you or figure out what you're doing or what's happening with the garden?
Oh yeah, you can find me on Instagram, on Facebook, on Twitter or X or wherever they call it these days. I never quite know what to call it. I still call it Twitter because
X sounds weird.
It's very weird. I don't like that. But yeah, you can find me in all of those places. I've got a blog as well where I put different things up. So yeah, I'm all over the place. I'm dead easy to find.
Very cool. And do you send out a newsletter to readers?
I don't personally. My publisher does that on my behalf. So if anybody does want to sign up to the newsletter there, you do get a free short story as well when you sign up, which is quite cool. You can only get it if you sign up, and they're very good because they don't spam anybody. They just sort of let you know when I've got something coming out, if there's a special offer on any of the books in the series. That's about it, really.
Okay.
Because I think sometimes we get too bombarded, don't we, with
Yeah, it is. And just as authors, it's hard to come up with content all the time.
Oh, definitely.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being on here and telling us about your book and being our first historical cozy mystery author chat. So that was all exciting.
Well, thank you for asking me. It's been really great fun. And hopefully, people will enjoy the books,
Awesome. All right. Bye, everyone. I'll leave all of Helena's links down in the description below or the show notes if you're listening to this on the